Hello and welcome, my name is Ryan, I'm also known as RM2K Dev. Now in this video we're going to be creating our first monsters. So something to battle. We might not get into combat just quite yet, but we're definitely going to create these monsters and maybe have a place for them to live. So the first thing we need to do is create some sort of forest. Now these are going to be forest monsters. I've just gone into RPG Maker and extracted out some of the RTP, and we're going to use these pink and blue flower monsters and maybe some slimes just to create some basic level 1 zone type of monsters. So what we're going to do is just jump into RPG Maker. We're going to create a forest map. Now I should mention just quickly that we're going to make it at the bottom of this town, so you leave the town and you'll enter a forest sort of zone. So I'm just going to add a sample map into our game, and that is going to be some sort of forest. Let's have a look. What have we got? If there's nothing especially good, we'll just create something really simple. Okay, there doesn't seem to be anything too great, so let's just create a really simple map. I'm just going to call this town. No, it's called. I'm going to make this maybe 20 by 20 in size. Actually, no, let's make it slightly bigger than that. Let's make it 20. Let's make it 30 by 40. There we go. So it's more of a vertical map. Let's fill it with grass. And just begin to sort of place down how our forest should look. So I'm just going to have a look at this. We've got a bit of stone path to the bottom. Guys, I think that will pretty much do for the moment. I've just created a really simple forest. We'll come back later and we'll add some details with things like little flowers and plants and bushes and things like that, but we'll do that inside of Game Maker so that we can have them positioned off this grid, which should make it look a little bit more organic. The one other thing that I want to do just quickly is add a staircase sort of down over here. Yeah, that should be fine. And that's going to be where our sort of like mini boss resides. Actually, let's change it from a staircase. We'll make it a hole. Let's make it a little hole. There we go. So after you've gone through the bottom of the town and you've come down here and found everything, and you come across, you fight a little mini boss over here somewhere, you can drop down this hole and there'll be a boss fight sort of inside of that hole, I suppose. What I've done here with the tiles is it's just gone from the stone path that was in the city to a sandy path, which is, you know, more or less what we'd probably find inside of a forest. So let's go ahead and export that using the same technique that I showed you guys in a previous video. Okay, so once you've got the slices for your map that have been created, go ahead and bring those into GameMaker. So create a new folder under your levels and just call it Forest. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to duplicate one of the existing maps that I already have, as these have already been set up with the hero start positioning and all of the properties for physics and things like that. So let's just duplicate one of these. I'm going to change the name to, I'm just going to call this rm_forest. Now we have to get the dimensions of this map, which are 30 by 40. So it's 30 times 32, which is 960. 960, and 40 times by 32 is 1280. There we go. So now we can just quickly delete everything that's already in this room. So I'm just going to get rid of the tiles and the collision shapes and the warp object, but we're going to keep that top left hero start object, as we need that to reposition the hero after a warp. So now you can begin to place your tiles inside of your level. Okay, and once that's done, go ahead and re-add all of your collision events. I'm going to quickly fast forward all of this stuff because I've already shown you guys how to do this in previous videos. Okay, so once your map is completely covered, we can begin to set up our warp events again. So we're going to need to go and save this map, jump back to the, make sure that's at the bottom as well, jump back to the home city, and we're just going to place some warp events down here at the bottom gate of the city. Oh, my collision events look like they've just disappeared over here as well. What's going on with that? Let's place my collision event back. So yeah, let's just quickly place these warp events at the bottom of this map here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate the existing ones from the map that I already have. So I can do that by just selecting copy selection and then paste selection, and then I can drag it off, I think. No, I have to select it, copy selection and then paste selection. There we go, and then I can drag that off. I'm just going to place that one just here. I'm going to make 2 more of these. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'll set this one up here first, and then I'll make 2 more. So we need to find out where to place our hero. So if we come over here and we set this to 16 by 16, it will be the bottom right quadrant. So if we place something that takes up, if we take these 32 pixels here, so that's 16, 16, 16, 16, we want to take the next one, the next block down, because we're going to have a warp event up in this row here. So we do want to place the hero down here. Now that's going to be at the bottom right quadrant. So if we look at this, it is looking at our GameMaker tile selected tile X and Y coordinates in the bottom right here, that is going to be at position 272 X and Y 48. So 272 48. So if we go back here and we edit our creation code, it should be 27248, 27248, and the destination room is rm underscore forest. So that should set up our warp event to that forest. Now let's just give that a quick test and make sure that works. Okay, so that obviously hasn't worked properly. Let's have a look what we messed up there. Sorry, I typed 474. That should be 272. Okay, let's have a look and see where that takes us now. There we go, so we've lined up with that bottom entrance. Also, you'll notice that our views are still working, and all of our collisions are working perfectly for this map, as we set those up just a second ago. The most important thing to note here is that the game is actually still running at full speed, and all of the map properties that we set up, so things like the speed of the rooms, they're remaining consistent because we're copying existing rooms. So we're not actually creating them from scratch every time, so we don't have to keep coming back and changing those settings. So what I've noticed if you do create a new room from scratch, it's better if you do go to a room that you've already set up and make sure that all of these settings here are actually the same. Otherwise you'll end up with rooms that run at different speeds and it just looks a bit weird. So let's copy, so we select this warp event again. Oh, what happened there? Okay, so we select this warp event again, and all we're going to do is we're just going to say copy selection and then paste selection and drag one across. Then we do the same thing again, copy selection, paste selection, and drag it across. Just like that. So now with the second event selected, we can just go to the creation code and have a look at our X position. So if this was correct last time, we simply need to add 32 to this. So let's just get our calculator and check that out. It's going to be 304. And for this event here, 304, and so for this event here, this should be 304 plus 32. Creation code. So let's check that out in our calculator. 304 plus 32 is 336. So now these three events should work perfectly. So let's have a quick look and see what happens. There we go, so we line up to whichever one that we did select, which we did collide with, sorry. So if we collide with this middle one, we should line up in the center of this map here. So now we need to do the same thing, except this time we're going to do it in reverse to take us from this map back to the home city. So if you turn your grid on and have a look at these coordinates here, it's going to be 6561360. And the destination room should be set to RM, home city. Let's just double check and make sure that's right, 6561360. And we're just going to do the same thing that we did. We're just going to copy this and paste it 2 more times. There we go. Now for the second warp object, we need to edit its creation code, and it's going to be 656 plus 32 because we know that it's 32 pixels to the right. So that's going to be 688. And for the last one, I shouldn't have closed calculator. Oops. There we go. And so for that last object there, it's going to be 688 plus 32. So if we have a look at this creation code, 688 plus 32 is going to be 720. 720. So now what you'll notice is we've very quickly and easily set up another map inside of GameMaker, and we've set up the warps between our home city and our forest. So now we can leave and enter freely. We just make sure they're all working. If we leave on an angle, it should still take us back. So what you'll notice is if we do come out in the center here, it will snap us to 1 or 2 depending on which one we collide with first, but the user won't really notice that just because these two positions do change based on the screen's view. I'll quickly show you guys the in I made earlier as well. So this is the in. You guys don't have to do this, I just set an in up just for demoing the warping system that we created earlier. And something else you might notice is I've also added a shift. Holding down the shift button allows the character to run, just so that we can quickly get through our world and debug things. So if you do want to add that shift to run, just open up your hero object, and in the step event handle input logic, you need to add, basically under the create event first, you add a walk speed equals 1.0. Then in the step event, we use that linear interpolate function that I spoke about last video, and we basically linear interpolate the walk speed to a higher value if the shift button is pressed, or if it's not, we take it back down to 1.0. Then for each of these position X, position Y plus and minus 1, we multiply those by walk speed. So if walk speed was 1, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1, it will only work. If walk speed was 2, it would be 1 times 2 is 2, so you would end up walking at a speed of 2. And the reason I do use this multiply here, I know it's 1 times, but let's say this was 1.3, it would scale up appropriately rather than just being 1 times. Okay, so for the monsters, I have had a request both to do an action RPG system and a tactical RPG system for the battles. Now, for this tutorial, I was going to do something unique, something that hadn't been done before, maybe a sort of hybrid MMO style combat system where you use WAS and D to move the character around, and then the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 to execute a few skills that you unlock as you level up. That's sort of the action RPG system that I think we'll create. We will come back in a future video and do a tactical RPG system that goes over handling the dialogues and the game state and things like that. But I think for the moment we'll create an action RPG system in the style of, you know, some of the more modern MMORPGs. So the first thing we want to do is come back up to our sprites and create a new group. We're going to call this enemies. Oops, I think I've spelled that wrong. That should be IES. There we go. No, not with a Y. Rename. There we go. So under this group, create a sprite, and we're just going to call this one here sprite underscore tree underscore monster. Actually, no, we'll create another group. Create another group, and we'll just call this forest monster. Under that, we're going to do the same thing that we've done for our heroes and our NPCs, and that is create a sprite underscore forest underscore monster. Just call this mon underscore forest underscore. I think it's up is the first one. I can't remember. Let me just check. Party hero. No, it's down. So sprite underscore forest down. And we just do the same thing where we edit the sprite and create from strip. Make sure you center that and select OK. We're going to do this for the rest of the directions as well. Forest monster sprites have been created. We're going to create a new group of objects, and we're just going to call this enemies. Under that group, we're going to create a group called forest monster. This is also mimicking the same layout that we have in the sprites, just so that we can find things quite easily. We know that if we're working on a sprite that's under enemies forest monster, we will also find that enemy under enemies forest monster in our objects. So just create a new object, and we're going to start from scratch with this. We're going to call this object underscore forest underscore monster. Now select a sprite for the enemy, which is going to be our enemy's forest monster. We're just going to use the down sprite for now, and tick the user's physics box, make the collision shape a circle, zoom in on it and make it maybe 1 pixel smaller than it should be, just so that it can have a little bit of depth ordering to itself. And set our density to 0.1. Select OK and jump back into our forest level. So now what we're going to do is we're going to place a few of these down. So let's just go to enemies, forest monster object. There we go, let's place a few down here like that. Come back to our object, and in our create event we need to set the image speed as well, or else they'll be really fast. So just image underscore speed equals 0.1 and test our game. There we go. So now you'll see that all of these forest monsters are basically doing nothing, but they do exist in the world, and they do have physics on them, but we're not colliding with them yet. So let's close this off. The next thing we need to do is we're just going to duplicate this object. And we're going to drag it outside of the forest monster folder. And we're going to call it object monster base. We're just going to leave it with the forest monster sprite, and we'll keep all of the settings exactly the same. One thing that we can do now is go back to our forest monster. We can delete its create event because we've moved that to the base object, and just bring in the parent, which is going to be object monster base. So now these should get the same properties, and this time they will have inherited the collision shape and any of the events that we've created on the base. So jump back to our hero object. We're going to add a new collision event with the monster base, and we're just going to copy our collide with script in there. And just so you guys know, collide with is just a comment that basically makes this event a valid event, because with no actions it just gets removed from the game. So let's quickly run this game and see if we have any collisions with these monsters now. So now we should be able to collide with them and push them around, but you'll notice that they still don't collide with things like the wall or each other for that fact, so we can push them over each other. So we don't want that to happen. They need to collide with monster base, and they also need to collide with the wall. So go back into object monster base. We're going to add a collision event with the system object collision, and we're just going to paste that collide with script in there again. The other thing we need to do is add a collision event with the enemy's monster base, and this will mean that they'll collide with other monsters as well now. So let's quickly go and jump out of this map and have a look. So if we try and push one of these around, they should collide with each other and not able to collide with the wall either. So you'll see that's what's happening there. So I can try and push these around and try and push them into the wall. They do collide with each other, as you can see happening there, and they also won't go through the walls. Okay, so that's quite fun already on its own, but that's definitely not going to be a monster as of yet. So the next thing we probably want to do is add some sort of movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this on a per monster basis. We're not going to use the base to handle all of this, because we want our monsters to act a little bit differently. So for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a what sort of event? Let's add an alarm. It's going to be alarm 0 and a create event. So in the create event, I want to say alarm 0 equals 1. So what this should do is when the monster is created, they should get actually let's make this random 30. So they'll all get a different start time between 0 and 30. Now in that alarm, what we're going to do is we're going to pick a direction. Now we can do this quite easily using the random number. So we just say dir equals random 360. So this is going to be a random direction. Any direction is fine. They're just going to attempt to make a little movement in that direction. So the next thing we need to do is add at the very bottom of this script, we add an alarm, and we just say 0 equals random 30. So again, this is going to make this happen sometime in the future between 0 and 30. Now underneath dir, we're going to use that length dir x function, so we're going to call this dx equals length dir x. It's going to be 30 pixels in the direction of dir. We do the same thing for y. It's going to be 30 pixels in the direction of dir. And that's all we need to do for now. So in our step event, we're just going to jump into our step event. One more thing we need to do in our create event is just add dx equals 0 and dy equals 0, or else this probably wouldn't work. So in our step event, we're just going to add phy underscore position x. We're going to lerp that equals lerp. We're going to lerp from position x to position x. What is this? Actually, no. Let's scratch that. Let's try something else. Yeah, let's get rid of this. Delete our step event. Sorry about that, guys. So open up your alarm code again. So now we've got the dx and dy. Let's try add a impulse to this. Physics apply impulse is going to be from x and y, and it's going to be in the direction of dx and dy. Let's have a look how that looks. Okay, so we have some issues going on here. That doesn't look too great. So what's happening here is they are moving far too fast. They're also colliding with us, creating forces and rotation, which we need to stop. So the first thing we need to do probably is go into our forest monster base, set their angular dampening to, I think it's 0.0 stops it from happening. Let's just have a quick look and see if that happens. Yeah, so it's not 0.0. We'll just set that to something really high, like say 10.0. We'll do that as well for the other one, 10.0. And we'll do that for our hero object as well, 10.0. So that should stop us from spinning around. Okay, so 10.0 may not have been high enough. Yeah, it's definitely still not high enough, so we need to make that even higher. Let's make that 99.0. We'll do the same thing for the monsters. So this basically locks it in so that it can't rotate. The other thing we want to do is in our object forest monster alarm 0, we need to increase this value, this random 30. We're going to make this 100 plus random 300. So it defaults to always having 100 frames. I think it's frames, so it should be frames. There we go. So what you'll notice is they are once every little while they will jump around a bit. So the next thing we want to do is make them a little bit less aggressive. So instead of moving them in 30 pixels, let's move them in 3 pixels. There we go, so that looks a little bit better. The other thing we want to do is slow down their animations. So let's, in our create event for our object base, we need to inherit the existing create event. So we need to say event underscore inherited. So that forces our base monsters create event to execute. So let's go have a look at them now, and they should be moving at a pretty good speed. Now the other thing you might look like is they kind of look like they're ice skating, which is probably not a desired effect. So we may want to make them slow down, have a little bit of linear dampening on them as well. So let's add maybe 10.0 to the linear dampening, and also for our hero we're going to add 99.0 for the hero's linear dampening. What this means is that when it collides with something, it won't push it away with force. So if I let one of these collide with me, you'll see what happens is I don't get pushed away with some sort of force. It's actually a bit hard to get one of these to collide with me. Let's just stand here. So they're still looking a little bit ice skating, so we're going to go back over to the base and we're going to change the linear dampening to 10 as well. Let's just have a look what that looks. So this is again another one of those trial and error processes, guys. So now they're not moving much. We're going to need to keep trialing these numbers until we get a number that meets our desired effect. So in our forest monster alarm, we're going to increase this from 3 because it's obviously not enough anymore with the linear dampening to say 30 again. And we'll see what happens then. Oops, I've just created a window. Okay, so that's obviously too fast. So we need to slow them down a little bit. So let's have a look what we can do here. Let's change this from 30 to 10. There we go. So they look a little bit better. We can keep tweaking these numbers until we get something better. So I'm going to keep doing that, and I'll show you guys what I come up with at the end of this video. One other thing that we could do is we could attempt to not use the physics impulses. We could attempt to use positioning. So if we say this direction is just 1, so we'll just say 1, so dx and dy are plus 1, go back into our step event, and what we're just going to do is we're just going to say phy underscore position x plus equals dx. We'll do the same thing for y. So they should slowly move forever in the direction that they've chosen, and hopefully that might look a little bit better, but we'll see what that looks like. There we go. So now these monsters are just going to keep moving around until they decide to change direction, at which point in time they will simply just change direction. One other thing that we probably want to do is add some sort of like monster gate. So what we can do here is we're just going to create a new event. We're just going to call this monster block. Actually no, let's call it enemy underscore collision. So this is going to be basically just a place where monsters don't like to be. And what we can do is we can just go to our system collisions, just duplicate our sprite collision here. I'm just going to call this sprite underscore enemy underscore collision. And I'm just going to change the color a little bit from red to blue. So let's there we go. Back down here in our enemy folder, I'm just going to reorganize this. There we go. In our enemy collision, we're just going to give it the system collision, sprite collision, enemy collision. There we go. And just tick users physics, change the physics shape to a box, position that correctly. And then in our monster base, we're going to add a new collision event, and it's going to be with the I didn't save that object, the enemy collision object. Copy our collide with script inside of that. Now when we go to our forest, we can sort of move these guys in here a little bit, and we can create a bit of a border that they will not pass. So I'm just going to move that just like that. Create a similar sort of thing on this side of the path. And what this is going to do is this is just going to help to keep the monsters sort of off the path so that they don't get in our way. There we go. Just going to try and lock these guys in there like that. I might do a similar sort of thing over here for this guy. So he's going to be a bit stuck if I do that, so let's give him a bit of breathing space. There we go. So you sort of get the idea of what we're doing here. We're just keeping them out of the way so that there is always a path for the hero to travel that's not going to get him killed. We'll keep them out of the way of the bridge so that they don't crowd this entrance, so you are once you get to the bridge you will always be able to cross it. And the other thing we'll do is we'll keep them out of the warp transition zone here, so if any monsters do somehow make their way up and over, they will not interfere with these warps. So let's have a quick look how that looks and maybe wrap it up for today, and we'll handle the attacking and defending in the next video. So let's quickly go have a look at our monsters. So what you'll see is, oh, that's interesting. I forgot to set the density on those collision objects, so they're just being pushed around. Let's go back to our collision object, set the density to 0.0. So let's quickly have a look at our monsters. There we go. You'll notice that they're all now respecting the collision events. There's a slight issue there where they don't seem to be agreeing with their own collisions, collide with self, but we'll have a look at that and sort of sort that out as it happens. So what you can imagine is if we did turn these collisions here off, the monsters would sort of, sorry, if we didn't turn them off, if we made this sprite invisible, which we'll do now really quickly, the monsters won't look like they're being blocked in so much, but they will sort of have some sort of boundaries. So I'll just set that to sprite collision off just so you guys can see this. There we go. So what you'll see is that they sort of look like they're being locked in, but they don't look too unnatural. And they should still be respecting collisions, I think. If I try and walk into him. Yeah, there we go. They're still respecting collisions. They might be slightly stronger than we are because they're moving constantly in a direction, but they still respect collisions. So once again guys, thank you for watching. In this video we've basically just created the basis of our monster system. In the next video we'll probably end up going over some sort of attacking and health, so you know it'll be maybe like the change the keys to WSAD, or maybe even leave the keys as up, down, left and right and make the attacks ASD and F. So we've got Z for interact and then ASD for attack. Something like that. I'm not too sure how we'll do the controls yet, but we'll have a look at it in the next video. So thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to my please like this video and then subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. There are more videos coming. I try to upload these videos once every 2 days. They do take a lot of time to edit because I am a new programmer. No, I'm just kidding. But I do have to edit out all of the craps and the almanaring from these videos. So yeah, they do take a long time to edit, so I try to get them out once every 2 days. So thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter, it's @rm2kdev. Once again, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel.